Hello everyone and welcome. So a lot of people have still been a bit apprehensive about how good Magia Record might actually be, and some people were already a little bit deflated, saying that all the stuff that we've seen so far, it's not quite as good as we were hoping for. But there was just this new live stream that they showed off where they showed basically the game in a much more finished state than before. Not quite finished yet, but still at least a lot more work has been done on it, and now it's been starting to look pretty good. So let's just go over it first off with the introduction. So there was this live stream that happened where 3 of the voice actors just basically were talking about some random stuff regarding the game, including showing off the new preview for Tsuruno, because she didn't have its preview yet. They also showed off some 3D images that showed like a cutscene, basically like an in-game cutscene, where they had one of the first scenes from the original anime just recreated a little in 3D, because of course they're going to retell a lot of these stories from the Madoka Magica anime, as well as some of these spin-offs, and I assume as part of that they're going to have some 3D cutscenes like this one that they showed off. I'm not going to show too many moving images because I might get copyright struck, so let's not have that happen. I have had stuff like that to worry about in the past, so here's to hoping that doesn't happen again. They also showed some more in-game images, some of which you can find on the official Steam page, because the official Steam page has been updated with a whole bunch of new information and new screenshots and a new trailer and everything new. Basically all the old stuff was just thrown out the window. They legit removed everything else that was old and redone everything now with the newer, better graphics, with the newer scenes, with all of the new mechanics and everything that they added in the game since the last time we've seen stuff about the game. So everything is new now. Wow. Everything, in my opinion, at least looks a lot better than it did before. Okay? So then they go into the actually important stuff. But before I talk about that, just a very quick note. With the development now being a little bit further ahead, they have put up the pre-registration for iOS. And as part of putting up the pre-registration for iOS, they also put down a release window. Now I want to make one thing clear, because a lot of people are going to get fake news about this. They put down May 25th as the expected release date. Now this is not the date on which it releases. It does not release on May 25th. They've basically said that we're expecting this game to be done before or on May 25th, which means it could also release on like March or something, or April, or earlier in May. Like, we don't know. It could happen way earlier. They're expecting it only at latest on May 25th, so it's probably going to be a little before then. Keep all of that in mind. And if you hear someone say the release date is May 25th, you know they probably got a little fake news, but it's okay. Now you know for certain what it is. But more importantly, back to the gameplay stuff. So they showed off something called here the break system. And the way that Exedra is going to work is going to be like this. So if you've played Star Rail, I can just tell you it's mostly Star Rail. Now, last time we saw the game, it was 100% Star Rail, just with a different like visual skin basically on top of everything that made everything look like magical girls. But apart from that, it was just Star Rail. Now it's still mostly Star Rail. Like, they went from like 100% Star Rail to like 85% Star Rail, maybe 80% Star Rail, but it's still mostly Star Rail. However, now what they've done is, and I'm gonna need to give you guys a little bit of backstory for this. Last month, maybe at the beginning of this month, the developers that used to work on this game, that still work on this game, Pokelabo, they got merged with another company, Right Flyer Studios, or just WFS for short, which did Heaven Burns Red, which released 2 weeks ago, which I've been playing, by the way. It's pretty alright. And that game has something called rolls, and it has something that is also very similar to the break system. And they basically rolled the Heaven Burns Red break system into the Honkai Star Rail break system, and now have this weird amalgam between the two that is a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And that is basically what we have now. So here's how it works. As it says right here, this is a Google translation, by the way, so it's going to be a bit weird. The enemy has a break gauge, and just like in Honkai Star Rail, when you hit the enemy with an element that enemy is weak to, like you hit a weakness, then you take a chunk out of the weakness gauge, right? So this weakness gauge, or just break gauge, or whatever you want to call it, then it gets lower and lower as you keep hitting the weakness, and when the break gauge is entirely depleted, the enemy enters a break, like they enter a broken state. And during that state, in Honkai Star Rail, you get like various special effects and stuff. But what happens here now, which is where the Heaven Burns Red influence comes in, is they say when an enemy is broken, what happens is they now take a lot more damage than before. In this case, you can see that they take 300% of the normal damage, which is like triple damage. Wow. That they take here. And not just that, when you now hit them, that multiplier increases. It is very similar, by the way, to Stagger in Final Fantasy 13, if you played that, where, yeah, now they can't act for a turn, and they take a lot of damage at once. And the rolls are going to play into that in just a second, but the way that break ends is either the enemy dies, or the enemy, when they actually reach their next turn, they're going to recover, and when they recover, their break gauge fills up again, the damage multiplier disappears, and everything continues as it did before. So the break only lasts for a single turn, but during that single turn, you get to do a lot of damage, and you get to absolutely blow enemies up. That's basically the idea. Now, how roles play into this is the following. There are various roles that characters have, and we can actually look at the screenshots and see the roles down here, where we have 5 characters. I think, yeah, the first one is Madoka, who appears to be a breaker. Then we have Homura, who appears to be an attacker. And then we also have Tsuruno, who is a buffer. And they do the following. They all can deal damage, of course. Normally they can just attack enemies, but they all have specialties. So the specialty of attacker is they're good at attacking, dealing damage. So basically these are the kind of guys who do the big damage numbers, especially when an enemy has been broken. So they capitalize on enemies being broken to really hammer in a lot of damage at once. Then you have the breakers. They're good at depleting the enemy break bar, and also they're good at making sure that the damage multiplier increases really high once the enemy has been broken. Buffer, of course, they buff. Debuffers, they debuff. Pretty self-explanatory. Defenders, they're your tanks. They give barriers to the group or give damage reductions, all kind of stuff like that. And healers, they heal. Pretty simple. We already had kind of stuff like this in Magia Record, where they had a type, but the type didn't really do much other than like some MP bonuses, like some stuff that didn't really matter too much, and some SE bonuses. Like it didn't really matter that much. But now it seems like it's gonna matter a lot more what role a character actually has. Okay, so look forward to that. And like, I think in Magia Record, some of the best damage dealers were not even like, were like healers or whatever. Like, I don't know. Anyway, now you might be thinking to yourself, does that mean there's no elements? Of course there are elements. So we have both roles and elements. Like we kind of had a Magia Record, but now it matters a lot more. So now the elements you have right here, you have the same that you had in Magia Record. You have light, you have dark, you have fire, you have forest, you have water, and you have void, basically, which you can also assume is like no element. And the way the elements would play into this is you don't have this triangle weakness as you might have had before. Like before, you had this triangle weakness where like water was really good against fire, right? And fire, conversely, was like weak to water. That's not really the case. What is now the case is, as you can see with the enemies, where it says below their HP bar, they just have some weaknesses. Like this enemy is weak to forest, dark, and void, which means now that in order to reduce this enemy's break gauge, you have to hit them with one of these 3 elements. That's basically the entire element system now. So no more triangles, now it's just this enemy is weak to that, so you gotta attack with that element. That's basically it now for that. And that's basically it. You also do a little bit more damage, it seems, if you hit the enemy's weak point, which, yeah, once again, is also kind of like Honkai Star Rail, where, yeah, it reduces the break bar, you do a little bit more damage, but most is for the break bar. That also means that if you want to do a team setup that doesn't rely on the break bar, you can bring any element, basically, so that's something to worry about. Now moving on, they didn't just end it there, because yeah, we've got some cool new information about the game, but they wanted to show us some more gameplay. And this new gameplay stuff that they showed was almost entirely different from what we've seen before. Everything we've seen before looks like a pre-alpha version. This looks like a beta version, like we're way further ahead now in the development process of this game. And they show a team, and everyone immediately jumped out the fucking seat, including me, because Masara and Kokoro are already here. They're in the game. They're gonna be here. We didn't even know if many Magia Record characters are gonna be in there, like at launch at least. Like, sure, maybe 1 or 2 years from now, we're gonna get a lot of Magia Record characters because they exist. So they're gonna be put in the game at some point. But at release, we weren't really thinking that we're gonna get too many of them, because they're probably gonna like focus on the staples, right? The staples. You have your Puella Magi Holy Quintet, those are your staples. Then you have your Team Mikazuki, that's your new staples. So you have both of those staples together, that's already 10 characters that you can put in there, right? And then you have Oriko and Kirika, that's 12 characters. 12 characters, 5-star for release, perfect. But we didn't really know how much they're gonna worry about rarities. Like, are there even gonna be rarities in characters? Is it just, like, are they gonna focus maybe on weapon gachas and stuff? There's some gachas where the characters are not as important as the weapons, right? So now it seems like we actually know what's gonna be happening. Masara and Kokoro, if you can look to the right of their image, you can see 4 stars. And if you look to the right of Tsuruno, you see 5 stars. So there are low rarity characters, and we do seem to get at least Masara and Kokoro right at the beginning. Potentially more micro-record characters before the game launches are going to be revealed. That's pretty cool. But yeah, there does seem to be a difference between 4-star and 5-star. And then there also seems to be a difference between like 4-star and 5-star, maybe even 3-star portraits. And these portraits are these equipment items down here. So once again, just like in Magia Record, you have your equipment items, which in Magia Record were called Memoria. Here they're called portraits. You equip them, they give you more stats, they probably give you special effects as well, and you level them up. Here you can see, oh, they're level 50 on all of these portraits, and you have a level for the characters, of course, they're all level 40. Then you also see they all have a role and an element, like Iroha is a light type breaker, for example, just to hammer that home. You have Kokoro, who is a light type defender, stuff like that, for example. Then this is the screen you see after selecting like a mission. So on the very bottom left you see the recommended stats for this mission. You should probably have at least 4000 strength, like party power. It like calculates all your stats together and says, oh, your character, like your power level is about this much. Like in this case it's 4502. And then it also shows you what elements you should probably bring to this stage, because the enemy is going to be weak to these elements. So you better bring these elements with you, which in this case, they did their homework, right? I'm going to bring these elements. So that's basically the much different selection screen. The old one really was just the 5 characters standing next to each other with their names, and that was it. And yeah, they didn't show us anything else. But now this actually looks like a screen that might be in the full game. Maybe like a tiny bit of improvements here and there with like more stuff. But yeah, for the most part, this is it. And then the actually important stuff, the stuff that we're gonna get to. And I think I can look at the video for this. I'm not gonna, like I said, I'm not gonna play too much because Aniplex really doesn't like copyright stuff. So we're just gonna look at some still images. So this is the actual combat screen. And you can see that the UI still mostly looks like Star Rail. It's still mostly Star Rail, okay? But more importantly, we now see that it has changed quite a lot from the original. So all of the character icons look entirely different. We now the skill icons look different. The attack icon looks different. The skill points look different. The information, the enemy HP bar, the initiative. They basically redone the entire UI to just look better and more clean. And it looks more like something that I want to interact with, because the old UI, it looks like I don't even want to play that game with a UI that looks as weird as that one. Okay, I didn't want to say it back then because I don't want to be too negative, but I kind of didn't like the old UI like at all. But this actually looks pretty snappy, okay, comparatively. So you have your characters right here. It shows you their roles, because like I said, the roles are important now. So you better know your character's roles. So that's why they make sure that you see the character's roles even in battle, so you don't have to tap on your characters if you forget, for example, that Tsuruno's a buffer. You know that at all times. If you forget the name, however, like if you forget that this is Tsuruno, you can't look at that. Like you just gotta know this is Tsuruno. It also shows you the element, although not quite as obviously as you might expect. It shows you the element by the color of their bar to the side of them. Like you can see this bar that every character has to the side of them. It has a different color depending on their type. And this bar, by the way, is called the Kyoku gauge, which we're gonna talk about in a bit. But on the left, you still have the initiative list that shows you when a character is going to act. So every character is going to get a turn, and we assume how many turns they get and when they get their turn depends on their speed stat. And that's probably going to be a thing. The characters might buff or debuff speed, or have other ways of like pushing themselves forwards or backwards on the initiative list, including enemies, of course. So you might delay an enemy turn for a really long time to just be safer, for example. Now the important parts here are, what do you do on your turn? So you have your skill points at the bottom, these glowing orbs, and when it's your turn, you can do one of two things. You can either do a normal attack, which generates a skill point, or you can do a skill, which takes a skill point, okay? So if you have low skill points, you do normal attack. If you have many skill points, you use them on your skills. It's not quite that simple because, of course, some character skills are just better than others or are just more important than others at any given point. So you might want to prioritize those over others. But the important part is that the skill points are shared across the entire team. So it's not that Kokoro has 5 skill points right now. The entire team has 5 skill points. And if Kokoro uses a skill right now, she uses one of the team skill points. And now all the other characters, they're going to have only 4 skill points left. Because Kokoro just used one up. But of course, that also means conversely, if Kokoro does a normal attack, the entire team against the skill point, now everyone has like combined 6 skill points. So once again, it's not that one character has a skill point, it's that all characters have together these skill points. Like a pool that everyone has to take in and put in, basically. You know what I mean. Take out and put in. So what does Kokoro's skill actually do? Kokoro's skill does a barrier. So she attacks the enemy with a skill, if we see it in a second. So she attacks the enemy, bam, does a bit of damage, and then it creates a barrier, which you can see now at the bottom of the screen. That there's now this tiny blue bar next to everyone's health bar. There's like a barrier, like it absorbs a little bit of damage now, so all your teammates are a bit more safe. It also gives like another buff at the bottom, like a secondary buff next to the barrier. We don't know what that is. This game's not finished yet, so there's like a placeholder effect. This is gonna have like an actual image later on, but right now it's just a placeholder, it's just an arrow up. That's like, okay, it may be something like defense up. I mean, it's a defensive character, probably something like defense up. You'll also notice that because she took a turn, her Kyoko gauge went up. That's going to be important. Whenever a character takes a turn, the Kyoko gauge goes up. And because the enemy was weak to light, it also reduced the enemy's break bar by a little. That's also important. So now we have Tsuruno. The enemy is also weak to Tsuruno's fire element, so you can see that the break bar is going to go down even a bit more. Tsuruno then does her skill, uses up another of the party's skill points, which does a bit of damage, bam. By the way, the quality looks a lot worse when you're skipping through like this because it doesn't load the full quality. The boss attacks as well. And what Tsuruno did is she gave everyone a crit rate buff, which you can also see on the bottom now. Everyone now has a crit rate buff, which is this spiky symbol. Awesome, great. The Kyoko gauge went up, awesome. And then everyone basically just uses their skill. Basically everyone just uses their skill. Nothing too important really happens here. Everyone just does a bit of damage, reduces the enemy's break bar by a little. Iroha reduces the enemy break bar by a bit more because she's a breaker. Because she's a breaker, that means she does more damage to the enemy break bar. Awesome. And Tsuruno, her buff is really strong because she's a buffer. Awesome. Kokoro, she defended the team with her barrier and her defense up, which I assume is the case because she's a defender. Now you get the idea, right? So yeah, she also does some damage and she buffs herself, which I think like crit. She gives herself crit rate up, not the team. Then you have Masara, who does a bit of damage and stuff and blah, and the entire team takes damage. Then everyone does some normal attacks, nothing too special. You can look at it yourself. It's on the, as you can see, it's on the official Magia Exedra YouTube. They still have the live stream up, and it's also linked in the news at the very top of the news that I posted in the Exedra news channel on the Discord. The word Exedra is going to be my downfall someday. It already is. So yeah, everyone just does a bit of damage, and now as you can see, we're getting close to actually breaking the enemy. So the enemy's break gauge has been deleted quite a bit. On top of that, also, everyone's Kyoko gauge is about full, and that's also going to get very important in a second. So now we're breaking the enemy, bam, the enemy gets hit right here with this attack, and now the enemy is broken. So now that the enemy is broken, we can see that the enemy's turn has been delayed. You can see right here, the turn of the enemy is in like 3 of our turns, but now, after the break, the enemy's turn got pushed way down, and that's really important to delay enemy turns, to break them. So now that the enemy is broken, also we see this damage multiplier pop up. Now we're doing a lot of damage. You can see so far we haven't really reduced the enemy's HP bar by a lot, and everyone has taken like 2 turns so far. So we're already like 10 character turns into this battle, and we haven't really done much yet. This is about to change. This boss is going to be dead before Masara's turn is over, I think. Oh no, before Kokoro's turn is over. This boss is going to be dead, even though we haven't really done much. And this is the power of the break. And the power of the Kyoko, which we're also going to see in a second. So now the enemy is broken, Masara attacks, and the important part is that now that Masara, once she attacks, she actually attacks twice, which is interesting. So they talk a bit about the break. before continuing on. Okay, Masara attacks, and like I said, I'm skipping through this, but she attacks twice right here. And this brings us into something that I don't think was mentioned specifically. And on one hand, these characters are all equipped with portraits, like these special items. And these special items, basically weapons, if you come from Star Rail, well, actually, it's not even weapons, it's like, what do they call that, fucking light cones, like weapons in Genshin. They have special effects on them. It's possible that the portrait that Masara has just makes it so that when you attack a broken target, you attack twice, right? But I think what is more so the case is just that Masara has a special character passive that when she attacks a weakness broken target, she gets to attack twice. But the second hit is like a special follow-up attack, just like in Star Rail is like a follow-up attack, because we're going to see it. We saw it now on her skill, and she also gets one later after her Kyoku attack, the same kind of follow-up attack, which does a little bit of extra damage, but only to broken targets, it seems. But it could potentially also be a portrait. And it's going to be the same a little bit for some of the other characters. Like some of the other characters, they randomly seem to gain some buffs, or Yachio, for example, seems to randomly gain Kyoku gauge whenever our other characters take a turn. And I think what's happening here is that Yachio might have like a character passive, because Yachio's special innate magic in the story is that she like gains power from other people's wishes and dreams around her and stuff like that. So that seems to maybe be factoring into her character passive, that just because she is Yachio, whenever someone takes a turn, she gains a little bit of Kyoku gauge, something like that. But we don't know any of these effects, and like I said, this hasn't been mentioned. But as far as I know, that characters even have passives. It's just that weird stuff has been happening in this video, and the only way to explain it is that characters have passives. Which has been the case in Magia Record as well, and of course Star Rail, that characters just have passives. Even Heaven Burns Red. So yeah, that's just a staple in RPGs like this. So we can assume that's the case here as well. So now that the enemy has been broken and we attack, you can see now that Masara attacked twice because of her passive, the enemy's break multiplier went up. It's now 324%. Every time now the enemy gets hit, the break damage is going to go up. Now I promised you that this enemy is going to be dead before Kokoro's turn is over. Now how could that be? Because Kokoro's attack, she's not going to do the entire rest of the damage herself, right? But here's the thing about Kyoku attacks. So now that everyone's Kyoku attack is full, or just generally if one character's Kyoku gauge is full, you can click on that character or tap on them with your finger if you're playing on mobile. And this brings you then to a special mode. Like I'm gonna call it priming the Kyoku, where you see the camera moves down a little and like gets a bit more dramatic. As you can see here, like the camera goes down a little and goes more dramatic. And you can see now that the selection on the right has been exchanged. So the player has now tapped on Kokoro. Kokoro has lit up. Her Kyoku thingy is glowing. Everything is now suddenly dramatic. And now she has this big button right here. And this is her Kyoku attack. Now in Star Rail, once you press someone's ultimate button and they are priming their ultimate, you can't back out of it. You have to commit to it. But in Exedra, there's a button right here that says cancel. And you can back out of it. And I'm smiling because this is the first thing so far that I see as an improvement on Star Rail, is the fact that you can back out of your ultimates, in this case Kyoku attacks. Hey, we've improved upon something, at least so far. Now that said, I don't think we need to improve too much on Star Rail, because Star Rail's combat is already like pretty fucking good. But at least we found something to improve on. We can back out of this if we don't want to. Now the important part about Kyoku attacks, in terms of turn order, because I said, oh, we're gonna finish before her turn is over. Kyoku attacks are their own special turns. You can see here on the bottom left, it looks like Kokoro has suddenly gained an extra turn. Now whenever you click a Kyoku, and you prime it, and then you fire it off, that character gets a special turn for that. And you can do that special turn at any point. For example, actually, you're gonna see it in a second. You're gonna see it. So she's gonna first use her Kyoku super special attack, bam, super special animation. I can maybe show a little bit of it. Bam, awesome, does a bunch of damage, and it also buffs everyone with endurance, which I think is named almost exactly the same as in Magia Record. And in Magia Record, the endurance effect meant that if you get hit with an attack that was gonna kill you, instead you get left at 1 HP, so you survive a hit, basically, and everyone got buffed with that. Awesome. Tank, ultimate, awesome, great. And her Kyoku bar is now empty because she used a Kyoku. But now the important part of the turn gauge. Now someone else is going to use their Kyoku. So even though it's Kokoro's turn, we're now going to see that you tap Masada, and suddenly Masada has now primed her Kyoku, and you can see that Masada has now gained a special turn. Because you can use Kyoku attacks at any point during anyone else's turn. This doesn't like cancel Kokoro's turn. Kokoro's turn is still gonna happen someday. It's just that we're gonna just pause the brakes. Like, we're gonna hit the brakes for now, just pause it a little bit, have a Kyoku happen, and then we're gonna go back to the actual turn order. So it's just a temporary like break Kyoku and then back to our regularly scheduled program basically. So then Masada does a Kyoku. It looks awesome. She does like a Shoryuken thing. Awesome, great. And does a bunch of damage, does a really good amount of damage. You can already see how much damage that actually did on the HP bar. If we go back a little. Yeah, this did quite a good amount of damage right there. It also increased the break damage multiplier even more. It's still Kokoro's turn. So we're going to continue now, and someone else is going to use their Kyoku now. It's going to be Iroha. She uses her awesome Kyoku, bam bam. And because Iroha is a breaker, you can see that the break percentage has gone up by quite a lot. It was at like 373. After 4 hits, a total of 4 hits, like 2 Kyokus and Masada's double attack. No, actually it was 5 hits because Masada's Kyoku also triggered a bonus attack. So it was a total of 5 hits so far that went on the enemy, and we're at 373%. So we're like total increase of 73%. But after Iroha hits her Kyoku, we've gone up by another 100% after that. Awesome. Like a lot of fucking more break damage, break percentage that just got piled up on top of that. Because he's a breaker. Next up, we're gonna have Tsuruno use her Kyoku, which also is a big attack, bam, bam, bam. But more importantly, because she's a buffer, what her Kyoku does, it buffs the entire party with a pretty hefty attack up buff. So the entire party has an attack up, which I think is this little spiky thing right here, this little arrow thing, or it might be a dagger, something like that. And the break percentage has now maxed out at 500%. It doesn't go higher than 5%, sadly. So that's pretty cool. But now that the entire party is buffed really, really hard by a buffer, we're gonna have another attacker Kyoku, and you're gonna have to brace for this, okay? Because now we have a super powered attacker who is hyper buffed from a buffer, who is going to hit a target that is weakness broken and has the maximum weakness break multiplier. And not only is Yachio's Kyoku strong enough to defeat the enemy in one hit from this HP, I've looked at the damage numbers and I'm pretty certain that Yachio's Kyoku right here would one-shot the enemy from full HP. Because she's just that powerful. But not just is she that powerful, because Yachio is the GOAT, but as I mentioned, you have a setup from a breaker, you have a setup from a buffer. Everything is stacked up on top of each other and works together as one cohesive team. Everyone is doing their job. Masada exists. Kokoro is defending the party. Okay, maybe these two are not that important, but the other three are working together really hard to make sure that the damage happens as best as possible, and it gives Yachio the power to basically one-shot this entire enemy from the top. You can see 57,000 damage. I think Masada did like 15,000 damage or something. Like, it wasn't even close to that kind of damage. That's the follow-up. Let me see if I can find the actual damage. Yeah, it's like 15,000 damage. So, yeah. You really do want to make sure when you play this game that you have a good setup. That all the characters are working together to get you that damage. Awesome. So now we've one-shot the boss. Awesome, great. And we get some player experience, although we don't actually gain any player experience right here, and I think that's because on this account this quest had already been completed, and I guess player like account experience like a first time bonus maybe. I'm not sure, this is still beta, we don't actually know, but at least you get money. Money is important. So yeah, that's what they wanted to show off here, and then the entire thing continues. So that was it for the most part with the gameplay stuff. Wasn't quite the end of everything they wanted to show. They also showed the following: pre-registration awards, because of course you gotta get pre-registration awards. Now the marketing hasn't really been that big so far, and like I said, the first preview they showed, like the first news posts they had, the game didn't look that great, so overall not that many people have pre-registered yet. And also you couldn't pre-register on iOS, and the game is still region locked in a lot of places, so everything's kind of playing against it, so not many people have pre-registered yet. But if we get to 500,000 people before the game releases, which is still at least like 3 months, maybe like at least 4 months or something before the game releases. So it's probably gonna happen. At 500,000, we're gonna get an actual character. An actual character is what we're gonna get, a 5-star, free 5-star if we get 500,000 pre-registrations. Apart from that, we just get a bunch of bonus Magica stones. They're called Magica stones now, even though they have the exact same design as the Magia stones in Magia Record, but they're called Magica stones now. We're just gonna have to get used to that, I guess. And the 5-star portrait as well is just some, I assume it's just a good early game portrait that's gonna fall off immediately, but at least it's something for a new account, for a fresh account. Now you can pre-register now on iOS, you can pre-register on Android, and you can wishlist on Steam. Wishlisting on Steam is the exact same as a pre-registration. Okay, keep that in mind. They're just counting how many people pressed a button on either the mobile stores or on Steam. That's the only thing that matters. I don't know if it counts if you pre-register on all 3 of those. It might count triple, who knows? We don't really know. But yeah, that's basically the end of all of those things. I will need to say one thing though, when it comes to naming, like I already said right there with the Magia to Magica stones. So when it comes to characters, characters exist in a weird state, if I can find it. Hold up. So you have the character's name. You can see that here. You have, for example, Nanami Yachio. That's the name of the character. But each character then has the actual playable unit that goes alongside it, which in this case is the Absolute Rain version of Nanami Yachio. Okay? So this means that, for example, let's say it's summertime and Yachio gets a summer alternate unit. Then the character is still going to be Nanami Yachio, but this is not going to say Absolute Rain. It might say like Summer Splash Nanami Yachio or whatever. Okay? And this, the actual title of this playable unit that actually decides what the playable unit is called the Kyoku, which is the exact same name as the ultimate ability. And in fact, this right here, Absolute Rain, is the name of the ultimate ability. So each character is basically named by whatever their ultimate ability is. So for example, Tamaki Iroha is the character, but this unit is Strata Futuro Tamaki Iroha. Strata Futuro being her ultimate ability. So when you hear Kyoku from now on, you're gonna have to think, okay, Kyoku means the playable character from the gacha. Like you might gacha Strata Futuro Tamaki Iroha. So you know, okay, that's the Kyoku. But Kyoku is also the name of their ultimate ability because the character is named after the ultimate ability, which is a Kyoku. They're both Kyokus because it's a Kyoku. And that's like, it's gonna be a bit weird in English because I think in Japanese there actually one is memory and the other one is Kyoku. Like I think katakana memory? I don't know. It's gonna be a bit weird too, like, because people are gonna accidentally mix up those names and words a lot of the times. They're gonna say, hey, like if you say I have Kyoku, you don't know, does that mean you have your ultimate ability ready or just mean you have the character? Like, is it both? I don't know. Yeah, but that's just a little pet peeve that maybe they could have named this a little bit better. Okay? But yeah, I will end this whole thing with some even more good news. So first off, the Magia Archive Volume 3 has been announced. And Magia Archive is this book that just has a whole bunch of background information on a lot of characters and like art of a lot of characters. And it's just basically a behind the scenes view of the Magia Record characters. So far there have been 2 volumes, and there's going to be a 3rd volume that shows even more characters off and even more information about stuff you wanted to know about any of these characters. Awesome. They're also going to be showing the Madoka Magica anime on YouTube. They're just going to do that on January the 7th. They're going to start. I think they're going to show like 1 episode per week. Like it's going to be as if it was a like TV broadcast, but they're going to do it on YouTube. Everyone's going to be able to download that, you know? That's going to be interesting. Like, of course, illegally download it, but I'm saying that people are going to do that. It's not going to be subbed or dubbed, though. I think it's going to be the Japanese version. Anyway, also, even better information, even better news to all my Brazilian people out there. Hey, how's it going, everyone? I know that I've heard from many people that they've been very, very sad that this game has not been available in Brazil, but that's actually changed now. The region lock specifically for Brazil has been removed. So now multiple people from Brazil have, in fact, come to the conclusion that they can actually now see the game on their mobile stores and on the Steam page. So it seems like, as I mentioned in the last few videos, that the region lock may change and that some regions that may still be locked may be unlocked at some point. In Brazil, at least for now, has been region unlocked, so that's great. But also, even if the game releases and your region happens to be locked, there's gonna be ways around that. Don't worry, there will be ways of playing the game on the English version. It's gonna happen, don't worry about it. But yeah, that has mostly been it. There has been some more stuff from the Steam page. I'm gonna link probably a Steam page below that you can take a look at it. Maybe I can look at it here. Awesome. They showed off the new trailer. They made a new trailer specifically for the Steam page, which looks pretty good. So much better than before. The animation looks so much better than before. It's insane. It also explains why they removed the old trailers and the old screenshots, because it just looks night and day how much better this looks than before. Like the old version really was like some pre-alpha that probably shouldn't have even been shown. It's still kind of weird that you run in a straight line through these landscapes. I think maybe just in a straight line is maybe a bit weird. But then again, Heaven Burns Red does the exact same. And Heaven Burns Red, it's like a top-selling gacha. It's like, I think, a top 20 gachas right now. And you also just run in a straight line through all kinds of landscapes. You can also just have a landscape and then you swipe to the side and then your character just runs from left to right until they get into an encounter. So I guess it's state of the art. It's a top 20 gacha. We're doing the same thing. And these are now the same developers as Heaven Burns Red, because like I said, they got merged. So interesting. They also showed a new, that's not what. No, a new home screen that has removed the stamina counter. There was a stamina bar up there that has been removed, so maybe stamina is not going to be a thing in that way. The buttons have all been either slightly changed or removed, but I think there's still the same mechanics and aspects behind these, so nothing too big. But yeah, generally just looks better. There's also more characters that you can see. Like here, Homura is a dark type attacker, because of course she is. I think they also showed some other stuff off. In one of the trailers that they showed, you could see Oriko. So Oriko is also going to be playable at release, which I think we already knew was probably going to happen. But yeah, looking pretty darn good. Planned release date spring 2025, in case you haven't read this from the Discord. Spring 2025 is when it's going to be released, which means either March, April, or May. And it says that it's going to be probably before May 25th. My guess is maybe mid-April, maybe late April, maybe early May, somewhere around there. Like mid-April to early May is probably my guess. We're going to find out. Until then, though, I have a whole bunch of other videos to make that are going to go in depth on all of the information that we have right now, because this was just, I don't have the time below me, but this is probably a long video, right? And this is just a quick overview of the stuff we know so far. There's going to be a lot more content to make. And I hope that you are going to be with me on this journey. So if you want to have more Exedra content, because I have some ideas on videos I might have to make to explain the game to you, or just to have some cool theories about what might happen, hit that subscribe button, ring the bell, and maybe leave a like, I don't know, leave a comment, I don't know. And I'll see you guys next time.